All right, welcome back to episode number 29 of the Recovery Tapes. My name's Gary and I'm your host. And today we have a different spin on recovery. I'm really excited about this episode. We are talking to a paranormal investigator. So it's going to be some chats about Freemantle and Midland. And we're going to go into some of the other things like the devices that are used to read and pick up on some spirits and stuff in some of these haunted locations. We're also going to talk about some questions off the internet that people have asked me to bring up. And then also as well, we're going to be speaking about what it actually is to recover from a paranormal investigation. So some of the things that today's guest does after all of this to keep his mental health and everything in check, because I'm sure everyone listening can imagine that is not easy to go to some of these places and then just wake up the next day and get on with your day like normal. So can you please introduce yourself to everybody, man?
Hello, everyone. My name is Paranormal Talks, or Caleb. I am a Perth-born paranormal investigator, and I've been doing this for probably 8 months now. And it's super fun and awesome to be here with you, Gary.
Thank you very much for coming on. I really appreciate you giving me the time on a Sunday morning. Just for everybody and yourself, I'm a bit sick today with the kids and
Oh, no.
school and everything. So if I sound a bit busted up, I do apologize. But how old are you, man? And where are you from?
So I'm 27 and I'm from Perth. So I grew up around the Kingsley Woodvale area. All my childhood, I was around Kingsley Woodvale, made some friends south of the river. So I was very familiar with crossing the river and the rivalries that came with it. I spent 3 years just after COVID in Brisbane, but then the love for Perth brought me back. Been here ever since.
Yeah, shout out to the north side of the river. I've had about 3 or 4 guests come on actually that have been really close. So I'm just in Joondalup, so we're really close actually.
Yeah.
So, man, so give us a little bit of your backstory, dude. Like, what sort of kid were you? What sort of teenager were you? What do you like to get up to before all of this stuff, man?
Yeah, so growing up, I was just footy mad, the AFL footies. I was one of those kids that played footy on the weekends. I did school footy as well. So during the week, I made my mum drive me around everywhere. I loved getting up to no good and going to some of these abandoned places that I now have returned to going to. Mum used to have to pick me up a couple times here and there in not nice situations because I was trapped in the middle of nowhere. But yeah, mostly just gaming and footy and obviously just hanging out with mates, as a kid does.
Normal kid shit, eh? That's
Yeah.
cool as, man. So shout out to mum.
Yeah. Yeah, she's awesome. She's the best.
So we'll just go straight into this, man, because I've got a whole series of questions that sort of lead into a flowing sort of chat, and I've set this show up to be as informative for everybody as possible. So let's just start out with the normal ones. So what first sparked your interest in all of this, man?
So it's a bit of a long story. So growing up, my grandma, my mom, and my auntie, they were always open to the idea of past relatives kind of being your guardian. So Willie Wagtails, the bird, has a very strong spiritual tie to the indigenous communities and then also just the spiritual realm. So whenever we'd see a Willie Wagtail, my nana was always like, that's your great grandma looking over you, or that's your pop looking over you, and things like that. So it always sparked my interest knowing that there was people looking out for me on the other side. Growing up, I asked my mum a lot of questions about the paranormal side, about the spiritual side, because my family aren't religious. There's certain things that they follow along, but this sort of afterlife thing is not normally like a religious type standpoint. My mum and everyone were very open to it. My sister was born premature, so she was born at 20 weeks. So there was about a year where we weren't sure if she was going to make it or not, but she luckily did. And so having that almost near-death experience growing up, she was always saying, I see Nan in this back room, or I see someone over here, which when being like 12 years old, that was very scary. But I quickly learned that it's not always a bad thing to see a spirit or someone that's passed.
Interesting that this has all happened this way, man, because my missus is Aboriginal, right? And we had a guy come over on Monday and Tuesday to paint our eaves at the back of our house and do some work, right? And the day that I asked you to come on to the show when I was talking to you on Instagram, we found out that the guy who was actually doing the work at our house was a psychic medium. So, yeah, so he was speaking to my missus and stuff, and he done like sort of miniature reading on her, and he was saying that he could see an Aboriginal lady, an older Aboriginal lady, like watching over her at the moment. So it's all sort of when it happens, it happens.
It really does. It's not hard to get lost in it and be a bit scared sometimes, but there's good and bad, just like real life, just like people in real
Yep.
life.
Yeah, nice one, man. So before you become an investigator, were you a skeptic or a believer, or is that just sort of like something that your family held that you sort of went along with?
So I was always a bit of a skeptic. I even carry it over to my investigations now. I always try and debunk everything before I go, okay, that might have been a spirit or that might have been this. So it's pretty healthy to be a skeptic in this field. It's obviously you have the psychics and the mediums that believe 100% and they follow their spiritual sense very closely. But for me, I'm more open to the fact that there's residual energy and then there's also the spirits. So it's one of those things that I try and keep a healthy relationship with.
So, was there a specific moment, like just off what you just said, was there a specific moment when you really started to go like, hang on a minute, there is something more here rather than just being a straight out skeptic on things?
Yeah, so when I was about 16, maybe 15 or 16, I moved into my grandparents and my nana was always open to the idea of, my great grandma and future relatives just hanging around and lingering and that sort of thing. And it wasn't until I had a night there that I was looking after my auntie's dog, and this dog did not make any noise. Like it would come up to you with like a teddy or something and make a little growl. But this night it was a bit stormy, so part of my mind was like, okay, if he reacts tonight, it's probably that. Um, there, I was sitting in the lounge room watching TV, and there's a little pond area on the other side, outside the window, and he turned his head straight to that direction and just lost it, and that scared the absolute crap out of me. I called my mum straight away because they live down the road, and I was like, "Can you send like my stepdad over? Like my dog, like Norm's reacting, going absolutely crazy. I'm not sure what's out there. Like I went and turned the lights on, nothing was there. So my stepdad came out, had a quick look, nothing around. We made sure all the doors, all the windows, everything were locked. Maybe about half an hour later, I was like, okay, let's just move into the room. I can close the door, keep him in there, keep him calm, put the roller shutters down and everything. We were sitting there watching TV, and him again just walked up to the door that was closed, started like sniffing underneath it like someone was literally standing outside the door. And I like paused the TV, turned it down. I was like, okay, this is a bit weird. So I messaged mum. I was like, Norm's being really strange. I'm not sure what's up. And then on the right side of me, outside the bedroom window, the gate that was part of where my granddad built to store his boat, slammed shut. And that thing, if I could go back and take a video on how hard that fence was to move, like that would just show everyone exactly what we were dealing with. And I lost it. I like grabbed Norm, went into the bathroom, locked the door. I called my mum. I was like, nah, someone's definitely trying to break in or something's happening. My stepdad came out. We did a big lap around the house. He brought a bat over. He had a torch and everything. We walked through the backyard, no footprints, like nothing anywhere. We went to the gate and he was sitting there trying to pull it open. And then we finally forced it open. And then we were just like, that can't slam. And he was like, nah, you're just freaking out. Nothing happened. But I was like, no, like, look at my eyes. I'm crying right now. Like, this is the scariest thing ever. So he ended up going and picking up my sister. My sister came and stayed there with me. And yeah, nothing really happened the rest of the night. But I was like, if Nana was right, someone was hanging around the house that night. And then from there, it kind of, my skepticism went probably, I reckon I'm 80-20 believing to skeptic.
Yeah, man. I can relate to that story, especially about the dog, because when I was about 15 or 16, the old Greylands Mental Hospital that's
Yeah.
down, yeah. So a lot of people from Perth would know what I'm talking about. This place has had some horrible stuff happen there. And we, for fun, used to drive down there. Now, we weren't too keen on going in there with just a few of us.
Yeah.
So we used to go with about 2 or 3 carloads of us. And my mate had this dog, and he'd bring the dog with him everywhere. Same thing. The dog was sound, never shit in the car, piss in the car, do anything wrong. Like, it was perfect, man. We used to come everywhere with us, and we brought the dog with us and the torches and stuff. and we walked through. There was like used to be like this hole that someone had cut in the side of the fence. So we
Yeah.
all went through this hole, and we walked through one of the first parts. We were sort of just normal, freaking out a little bit, like a little bit woo woo, a little bit scary. And we came out of one of the units that was like a double storied unit full on, and there was a courtyard in the middle. So we've all walked through the courtyard, and like there was about 10 or 15 of us, right? And we had the dog with us. There was another unit on the back side. So we've walked into this other unit, and there was a set of stairs right there as soon as we walked in the door. And our mate's dog sat down and just started fucking whimpering, man.
Wow.
And it would not. We freaked out. We left. It scared the absolute shit out of us.
Yeah. But they say that dogs and animals like that can sense that spiritual side so much more than we can. So
Mm,
yeah, just any sort of thing that involves animals getting scared, just even if they're home alone,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that triggers me a bit.
All right, man. So, how did it go from curiosity, like to stuff like this happening, and then what you just said about your family and all that? How did it go from that to actually starting to conduct your own investigations?
Yeah, so November last year, me and a couple friends were just joking around with the idea of going on a ghost hunt or going on a ghost tour. So we kind of bonded over our love for like Sam and Colby, Haunted Nights, like those sorts of YouTubers.
Yeah, yeah.
We watched a lot of ghost TV shows like Ghost Hunters, and a couple of them were big horror fans, which I'm not a huge horror fan, which is a bit weird for a paranormal investigator. But I think I don't like being jump scared. I like being like just scared throughout the night. So we decided to go on a ghost hunt, and then we booked with Perth Paranormal Investigators, and we went to Sunset Hospital.
Mm-hmm.
It was about 3 weeks before we meant to go. My friend was like, "Hey, why don't you just get a camera? Let's get a little bit of gear, and let's just try and do an investigation and see what they say." I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I bought a camera, bought the gear. We went and met James and Susie from Perth Paranormal Investigators, and James comes on a lot of stuff with us now from that night. And it was a very strange night. We walked into the place, and James and Susie were kind of like, "Oh, this is a weird energy tonight. We've not had this sort of energy for a while." Already, me and the three friends that I was with were kind of like, "Okay, that's not sure if that's a good sign for our first proper ghost tour, but we'll go along with it." And we were there for way more than the tour time was. I think it was meant to be 2 hours. We were there for about 3.5 hours, just walking through the place, just testing out equipment, recording some stuff. And from there, like the next couple of days, I was like messaging my friends. I was like, "Where else can we go? What else can we do? How can we push what we did last night a little bit further?" And it just blew up from there.
What is Sunset Hospital?
So Sunset Hospital is in Dalkeith. So it's an old kind of soldiers' refuge slash hospital. Originally, it was around for, I believe it was about 200 beds, but it quickly expanded maybe like 3 times that. They had a lot of overpopulation issues early on. And to this day, a lot of the buildings are still standing. You can't go inside the buildings. They're pretty fenced off, but there's just a lot of history in that location. And then obviously being right near the Swan River, that also carries a bit of spiritual energy that kind of lingers around the place.
Yeah, so just to let some people know, what Tox is talking about here is the way that Perth is set up,
Mm.
especially around Fremantle, Dalkeith, Midland, some of the earlier parts where Perth City was built, there was a lot of settlers that come in through here. And these places are known to have a lot of overpopulation. Unfortunately, there was a lot of deaths, a lot of child deaths as well. So I did some, when I used to be a little shit, when I was a teenager, I used to get into trouble. One of the things you have to do when you go to court is you have to do community service. So they put you all on a bus, right? And what you do is you go around to all the old places out in Midland and up near the hills, all the
Yeah.
old churches, and you have to mow and whippersnipper all the grounds and stuff. And one thing that I found really sort of distressing, or one thing that used to get me about it, was the amount of people who died young, and the children's graves out in these spots are fucking hectic.
Yeah, it's scary, especially when you go if you take it even further and go south towards Fairbridge, that place
Mhm.
that's probably the most traumatic place that I've been to, and it's somewhere that I don't like making too many videos on just because of that history, because there's still people alive that suffered through that, and I don't want to bring up any like feelings or a trauma from that. But you're correct. The settlers were full of old convicts, and all along the Swan River is just kind of covered in the spirits and lots of children graves, like you said. Everywhere we go, we always find a lot of children graves, which is very sad.
I think we have to give a shout out to modern medicine and the way that we live in our times, like that a lot of
Yeah.
things as well that I would sort of say is I think a lot of the people that lived through those times would have held a lot of pain as
Hmm.
well from the losses and some of the stuff that they went through. So we'll get into some of the other questions now, just so we've sort of
Yep.
set up the base for the show and people can understand a bit more in depth where we're going with this. So, what training or preparation do you guys put into these videos? Because I imagine you wouldn't just rock up and get out the car. Right?
No, we do a lot of research on the history, the lands, what the
Yeah.
buildings were before they may have been like a prison, or, for example, Freo Arts Centre. That's now obviously like an art museum, but previously that was a lunatic asylum back in the day. So we just make sure that we cover all the grounds, make sure our facts and our history is correct. We do a lot of prep. So the day before investigations, I just like to make sure my mind is so clear. I go for walks, spend time with friends, family, and try and get a good amount of sleep. Sorry, you might hear my dog in the background. But yeah, we just try and just reset the day before we go into an investigation. A couple of my friends that come along are mediums. They're very sensitive to the spiritual realm, so they do their own preps. They're very
Hmm.
grounded in what they do. And then before we go into any location, we make sure we do a prayer. We try and envision light surrounding us to protect us, and we try and have peaceful thoughts and everything. And yeah, before we go into any location, we make sure everyone in the team is sound and ready to go.
I'd imagine that's probably quite a connecting experience for you guys as well. Like you sort of protect
Yeah.
yourself in a group rather than just flowing in there, man. So, what's the most intense or unexplainable experience that you and the team have had?
Swan Districts Hospital the last time I went there. So we went at the
Yeah.
start of the year in January. We didn't spend too much time there, but the second time we went, I I was a bit unprepared. I had a massive day at work, so I wasn't really 100% across what I was going to do that night, and I was a bit off. So when we did our prayer circle and positive thoughts and everything, I thought that I protected myself well. But during that night, we went into a basement area. We went into a couple of spots that had a lot of kind of demonic and satanic symbols and things. And the mediums that I was with that night, James and Tegan, as soon as we left the basement, they were like, "You've got something on you. We
Fuck.
need to protect that, and we need to get rid of that." So we saged, we did a prayer circle, and we just tried to get everyone back on the same page. It wasn't just me that was affected by it. There was a couple instances where, so we do what we call a call out. So we'll stand in a room if not much activity is happening. We will say, calling out to the spirits of the location. If you're peaceful and positive and want to come forward and chat, please come forward. But that night I was a bit off, and I just said, any spirit here, come forward and chat, which is a no go for us. We like to try and bring forward the peaceful ones, but that night I obviously didn't. And that affected our group. We get along well, we chat, we message each other every day, every night. Oh, sorry. Do you want me to go? I can go shut
No,
him off.
no, no, it's
No?
all right, man. Keep talking.
Yeah, we just started bickering. We just started fighting. We started going at each other for literally no reason. We were at one stage happy chatting, to the next we were just at each other's throats. So we were just being rude to each other. We were ignoring each other, and it was all stemmed from just whatever had attached to me during that experience in the basement. Looking
Wow.
back at some of that footage, I was a dick. I was a dick for no reason.
Yeah, wow. So is that like the scariest thing that's happened to you, so to speak?
I would say, yeah, looking back at the footage, I was just out of control. I didn't know what I was doing. Normally, with bangs and crashes and voices and communication, we can hear that and we can see that. We can debunk it and talk about it. But I was just hit by a wave of something that wasn't me.
That's hectic, man. That's
Mm,
full on, eh? Like, so theoretically, walking into these places, I must imagine it's dark as well, eh? Like, you guys have your lights and stuff. Like, can you
yep.
tell us about what sort of setup you have with that?
Yeah, so we bring torches and camera lights and different like objects like that. A couple of the guys have like lanterns that light up, and so we can see pretty well. And we try and go in when it's still sunset, so we can see a little bit more than what the lights will show, just to get comfortable with the area, what's around, that sort of thing. And then once we set up in a room, we make sure like there's lights around us so we can see initially what's near us. And then we'll have a couple of lights around the place. So say if there's a far corner, we'll be able to see in that spot. So we always make sure we bring adequate lighting, 'cause especially for the camera, so you can see things.
Yeah, man. Fucking hell.
Yeah.
That's full on, dude. That's definitely not a light travel through the night, so to speak. Like it'd be pretty heavy, pretty full on. So
Mm.
one of the biggest requests and one of the questions that I wanted to ask from watching some of the ghost stuff that I've seen around is, can you tell us what an EMF is and how it works, please?
Yeah, so the EMF device, I don't have one in front of me right now, but it's basically got 5 lights on it. It's a little recorder that senses electromagnetic frequency. So back in the day, before it was used for spirit finding and communication, it was used to detect small levels of radiation and energy. So if you go into a old warehouse or an old space, people would use these devices to detect if any power was on before they would knock it down or do any works there. There's still some of those devices used today for electricians. Obviously, they go up and test the wires and things before they cut them and that sort of thing. But these devices you'll see in a lot of the videos, they'll have 5 lights, they'll have 2 shades of green, a yellow, orange, and then a red. So we try and keep them away from our phones because obviously your phones will emit some energy. But we'll just walk through, and if we get the device lights up at all, we'll just stop in that one spot and kind of work out what it was. Might be like a wire in the roof, or someone might have walked past with like a camera or something and it might have gone off. But a lot of the time, if I'm using it, I'll hold it out in front of me with my camera gear back here. So it would be like a good distance away, and it will just spark, it'll go off. And then normally that is followed by something coming through on one of our apps or another device going off. So it's one of those devices that is easy to debunk. If you're next to a wall, could be something in the wall that's causing the energy spike. But
Hmm.
if you're in the middle of a bush or in the middle of just a room that hasn't had power for years, it
Yep.
could be spiritual.
So tell us about the ghost tube, bro. Is that
Yeah.
like, sorry, yeah, go. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so a ghost tube is one of those things at the start I didn't really believe, because it's on your phone. It could take in any sort of energy or magnetic wave to spark something. The creator could have made it a way that every 10 minutes something goes off. But
Hmm.
the app is made and designed by Amy's Crypt, who is quite a big YouTuber out there these days. And essentially it just has a database of about 1,600 words. If a spirit comes along, puts energy into the words, it can say the phrases. So a lot of the time we don't get the same thing over and over. A lot of the time it's different things that come through. So it's one of those devices I'm starting to trust a little bit more. There's a few devices like GhostTube, there's Spirit Talker, and there's a couple other ones that are very similar.
Interesting that it doesn't have like it can't talk to you in sentences, you know what I mean? I think
Mm,
that maybe would give it a bit more sort of realness to it, because
yeah.
I do imagine that the skeptics or the people out there that are trying to hate on the videos or put negativity in the comments would definitely jump all over that and be like, nah, fuck off, you're just doing this and that. So
Yeah.
have you had much of that stuff, man?
Yeah, so I mean, GhostTube does have like phrases, so it can say, I think the max is maybe 4 words or 5 words, so it can do a small sentence. But
Yep.
we normally have 2 going at the same time, and they normally bounce off each other, which is quite scary when you get one response on one phone and the other phone's saying something very similar. So we've had a lot of comments like that where it's like, oh, ghost tubes on your phone. It's not true. You're using the internet, that sort of thing. But the phone that I have the app on, that's the only app that I actually have on that phone. It's in airplane mode, no SIM card, nothing.
Mhm.
So I show that all the time when I start it up in my videos. I show that there's the airplane symbol in the top corner. There's nothing on this phone but that. And yeah, it's some of the responses we have to debunk or take with a grain of salt. But when we're talking and it's repeating what we're saying back to it or answering in a very just like human way, that's when we know it's real. But yeah, we get comments like that all the time.
Be scary, eh? Like, I'm a big
Mm,
pussy, bro. I couldn't do this, dude. And I think a lot of people listening that would be interested in hearing this interview or watching it on YouTube. I think
yeah.
people's interest will definitely be sparked by this conversation. Like, it's not just like any old person could go and do this. I feel like there's only a small percentage of people in our society that would
Mhm.
actually do this in their spare time.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that I've recommended going on tours and things, and they go and that's it. They spend half the time there. So two of my friends that actually joined me at Sunset Hospital the first time, they don't come on anything else. They're done. They got too spooked out that night that that's it for them.
Fair enough, dude. Fair enough.
Yeah.
You know, you're like, you can't really blame them, can you?
No, no, definitely not. It's not only is it like a mental thing, but it's like if you don't like watch horror movies that don't like getting scared and you have like high emotions, it's all about that too.
I can imagine the heartbeat and the heart rate as well going into some of these places, man. Like, I know what you're talking about when you were mentioning the symbols and shit, because I'll just say for some of the other people that are listening in other states and that, because I do have a small following sort of over east and that, it is weird how much satanic symbols and shit you see sprayed in graffiti around Perth in these old buildings and stuff. Like, even some of the places that you're
Definitely.
talking about in Midland and Dalkeith and all these old buildings, you'll just be driving past in your normal day and there's just this huge fucking symbol on the side of a
Yep.
building, eh?
Yeah, even just bridges, like the underpasses on the freeway and stuff, they're just everywhere. And it's like most of the time it's kids having fun, but they don't realize that what significance that actually holds to some people.
Yeah, man. I mean, like I said to you, I'm not a massive believer myself, but I definitely wouldn't be playing around if there was one of those symbols there and taking the risk to see whether it was a kid doing it or not.
Yeah. Well, especially in Swan District's hospital, like the basement down there, there's been rumors of people doing seances and
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
all sorts of bad things down there. So when we saw that graffiti, we tried to move to the opposite side, but yeah, obviously that's just everywhere.
Yeah, that's scary as so I've got some questions from people that have
Yeah.
asked from social media, like I said to you. And like I said before, just to give a bit of a backstory about this, like, Fremantle was a place where lots and lots of first settlers come in. So Freo was actually built before Perth City was. It was built by a lot of immigrants that come in from a lot of places around the world as well. Like, a lot of the stonemasonry work and a lot of the buildings that are built there weren't just built by the convicts that come from the UK. There was a lot of Portuguese and Brazilian stonemasons and stuff that actually taught the trade of stonemasonry to some of the settlers and some of the early people that come. And a lot of those guys that were convicts that come, you can imagine they wouldn't have been very nice people, you know? And so they do say that Fremantle in general itself, the whole place, with how many people have been killed at the prison, because it was the place in Perth where they used to hang people. I'm sure everybody listening in Perth has done the Fremantle prison tour at some point in their childhood or their adult life. So one of the questions from Michael and Jason, they both asked, what's going on at the power station, Freo
So
Power
the
Station?
power station is one of those places I actually haven't gone yet, and there's been a few urbex expeditions that people have gone in there. And when I was a kid, I got into the fence zone, but the security pretty much got us straight away, so we didn't actually go in the building. It's just sitting there, and people go in all the time. After that boy's death, I think it was in 2020, from falling in there, they just lock it up. There's not much going on there. There's security there 24/7, and it's one of those places that's in such a beautiful spot. If they just put a little bit of work into restoring it, that could be like home for the homeless or could be some sort of use to the Freo Council. But it's just, yeah, one of those spots that they haven't bothered touching, which is, it's sad.
It is weird, eh? It just sits there, man. Like, it's
Mm,
this huge open space and building. And then
yeah.
you can imagine I mean, fuck, to some of the money that they put into restoring other places in Perth, or the statues they put up, they paid $1 million for the stupid green cactus in the middle of Perth.
Yeah, no, I don't think obviously I'm not a builder or anything. I don't think it would cost too much to restore it so you could go in there and even have like concerts or something. But the fact that it's a big, mostly structurally sound spot, it's just sitting there. The text on the top as well, the graffiti that I think it was I shouldn't have loved her or something like that, that most Perth people would know. It's a bit haunting.
Yeah, man, 100%. Some of
Mm,
the stuff that you see on some of these buildings is hectic. And like you mentioned it before, the arts center that
yep.
used to be an asylum, they say that you can see a lady in the window at the top, don't they? What do you know about that?
Yeah, so that's one of the places we've been really trying to get into, but there's a lot of spots that just don't want paranormal investigators to come in.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a few reasons to that, which we understand. Obviously, the significance of the history and the indigenous suffering. They don't really want to talk about that too much, which is completely understandable. But there's the art center that, yeah, you can see a lady up the top in one of the windows, but you can also hear her coming down the stairs quite a bit too. So if you're sitting down the stairs waiting for someone, there's a lot of reports of people walking down the stairs, literally footsteps, and you turn to see no one's there.
Yeah,
It's yeah, it's my grandma actually says her and one of her friends were there. I think early cousins, and they were just standing there waiting for my granddad to come down the stairs, and they thought he did. They turned around, no one was there. They both felt chills through their body and got scared. Yeah, I've walked through there once, but just going there to do an investigation would be so cool.
is that one of your, is that in sort of one of your top 5 spots in Perth that you'd want to go to?
Yeah, there and a solo investigation on the Freo prison. Those two would be up there. But unfortunately, yeah, the same sort of reasonings. The Freo prison, they do the tours, obviously the nighttime tours and stuff, and you can go in there during the day to walk around, but they don't like the paranormal side being discussed, which is, yeah, it's fair.
Fuck, Frio Prison is a cold place, bro. I mean,
Yep.
even the fact that they have that waterway that goes underneath it. So for
Mm,
people that are listening that don't know what we're talking about here as well, I'll just give you a bit more backstory. When you go on the nighttime tours, you can actually go in like a little boat and it goes underneath the prison in a waterway. And this waterway leads out to the ocean and
yep.
and the river and stuff. And so when they used to hang people, I do believe in back in the day, I'm pretty sure they just used to drop their bodies straight in the water and just let them float out into the river, which is what you were talking about before
Yep.
about the Swan River being a fucking scary place at night. Eh?
Yeah, and obviously the water traps that spiritual energy and then that travels to wherever it needs to be. But I would say that Freo Prison's probably the most haunted place in Perth. I'm going to throw that out there.
Yeah, I would love to do a podcast in there, eh? I would love to
Yeah,
do a I'd love to, if I could ever get the, I suppose, approval the same as you're saying, I would love to sit down in one of the old courtyards out there where they used to
yeah,
have all the blokes walking around and stuff and actually sit down and maybe do like a prison episode about the history and stuff of some of that things because
yeah,
there's so much rich history in that part of Freo. And man, at nighttime, I barely go down there. I won't go down there at nighttime, man. It is
yeah.
creepy as.
That's completely fair.
So, what about the Midland Town Hall?
Yeah, that's another spot I haven't been to yet. We've got a couple of things in works for this year that we might go and do soon. But the Midland Town Hall, just Midland and Guildford in general, obviously it's another one of those spots that had convict relations, the old settlers, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of energy and residual energy left over from hundreds of years of just things going through there. So the town hall, I believe that was once an old jail building. I'm not 100% sure on that. But there's a lot of buildings around Midland, around Guildford, even like Kalamunda area that were, even the restaurants and things, they were old like jail cells and things like that, old like psych buildings, that sort of thing. It's just crazy how they don't really warn you about what used to be. It's just now a restaurant. You could be sitting in a restaurant and thinking someone's coming up towards you, but it's no one.
So, realistically, as well, just I know you know this, but I'll point it out for the listeners as well.
Yeah.
There's an island off of the coast of Perth, Fremantle, Rottnest. And what a lot of people don't know about Rottnest is it's a family holiday location. Go over there, you stay with your kids, you stay with your family. You know, they've got beautiful fishing beaches. This place is beautiful. But one thing that they hide from us and they don't tell us, just off the back of what you were just saying, is that was a prison convict island for Aboriginal men. So I believe the convicts that actually came over and done good, so to speak, got to be guards and stuff there.
Yep.
And I have heard some horrific stories about people going just to camp there and they're pitching their tents into the ground and sleeping there at night. But it is actually an old cemetery that has been just
Mhm.
completely covered over, eh? What do you know about that sort of stuff, man?
Yeah, even some of the lodges and the new buildings that they put there, that's just they've just scrapped and cleared out all the burial sites, all the old monuments, and just built over the top. Rottnest
Man,
is it's a beautiful place, don't get me wrong, but there's a reason why Indigenous people don't go there.
yeah, yep,
And what you were saying, that Indigenous men, it wasn't just men, it was young boys and things too. So you could be 10 years old doing something wrong, get chucked out on Rottnest. It's just, it's a terrible, terrible place for the history. But it's like a lot of the places in Perth, they're still some of the most beautiful spots. Like Frio,
yeah.
that's a beautiful little town, but it's like, as soon as you know the history and what was actually there, it's scary to look past that.
It's the same in Midland as well. So it was a lot of men's sheds and shit for when they came back from the war. So if you
Yeah.
actually do the historic tours and stuff, it's not just what you were saying about the settlers that come back. All the people that come back from World War II, I think it was, there
Yeah.
was just a whole bunch of people that were just there's a lot of energy there, isn't there? There's
Yeah.
a lot of negativity too.
And with bipolar disorder and PTSD and things like that, they didn't know how to take care of those things. So if you were a soldier experiencing troubles from that, they'd just throw you straight in any sort of jail that they could, any sort of asylum. You could be a normal functioning guy, but occasionally you'd have those spurts of PTSD. You'd just still be locked up because your family didn't know what to do with you.
Can imagine that's where some of these spirits that are trapped there, so to speak, would come from. Like, like, yeah, just say a guy come back from war having a full flashback about all this horrible stuff he's seen, and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden he's thrown in this dark cell and ends up dying there. You can't imagine that it's going to be a nice thing for him at the end of it on the Passover, right?
Yeah, that's what we get a lot at Sunset Hospital. It's a lot of like soldiers and nurses
Ooh,
that used to take care of the soldiers. And a lot of the responses and words we get through are relating to the wartime, which yeah, it's just sad. It's the feelings that you get at some of these places, especially when you start opening up yourself up to that communication.
mm,
It's you're almost feeling some of their emotions sometimes, which you need to my friend Tegan says it's always smart. As soon as you start feeling an emotion inside that's not yours, you need to just return it straight to sender. Otherwise, you can get trapped on that, and that kills the night straight away.
So the other question I got asked was about some murder scenes in Perth or anything that's gone on. And I saw a video that you did, and I'm really interested to talk about this and ask you this question. I think you know exactly what I'm
Yeah.
about to say. So, can you tell people what happened at the Rockingham Memorial?
Yeah, so I've actually been told not to mention the name. I had to remove some of that from the footage. But back in the early 2010s, there was a lady that got murdered at this spot, and it was kind of like a drug deal gone wrong, like an anger kill type thing. She was then taken up the top of the place and dumped in the lake that's there. And this is obviously fairly recent, and it's still so all over the news down this way, and like Rockingham area, people talk about it quite a bit because this memorial park, beautiful place. Like it's one of the most beautiful spots, kind of like Pinaroo Point. It's
Yeah,
gorgeous. But we had coming through two different devices. We had knife, sacrifice, argument, lake. Like it just linked up perfectly. And it wasn't until I went back over the footage and put it together that it basically described the exact murder events that would have happened that night. And that that gave me chills. Like putting a
yeah,
story
bro.
together like that was
It's hectic, hey? Like,
mm,
especially with what you were saying before about the water and the trapping.
yeah.
Man, that's creepy, eh?
Yeah, we were just by that lake for a little bit and we went back down to the front near like the parking lot where it would have happened. And we just sat around there trying to open up communication. And normally when you get those words, something I'm trying to like learn and some things the team that I go with are starting to learn is when words like that start coming through the spirit box or ghost tube or things like that, we're quick to try and dismiss it and think of it as them trying to threaten us. But I think we need to take a step back and see how it goes in like a story sense. So in that sort of situation, we were dismissive. We were saying when it said
Mhm.
sacrifice, when it said knife, we're like, look, we're here with peace and positivity. Can you please talk to us with a bit more respect, that sort of thing. And we need positive energy coming forward. And it just kept happening. So when I was watching it back, I was like, hold on, that they weren't threatening us. That wasn't a message for us. That was
Yeah,
someone
yeah.
either confessing or someone witnessing what happened.
Wow, man. That's,
Mm.
That's full on. I'm sure there'll probably be a few people from Perth listening who didn't know about this. Like, that's only, what, 15 years ago, 16
Yep.
years ago?
Yeah, it's fairly recent. There's a lot of those that happen. So, like in Fairbridge, especially when I went there back in December, there was a lot of things that came through, like abuse and like they lied, and those sorts of responses were coming through thick and fast. And if you know what happened there it was like meant to be a farm school for children that were orphaned from the war. They came over from the UK and they were subject to a lot of abuse and misfortune over here, and it was a tragic spot. So getting those responses in those locations is just it's a bit sad.
Yeah, it's also a bit creepy as well, eh? Like, just on what I was asking you the questions before about believing and what made you believe,
Mhm.
etc. I mean, some of these experiences that you've had definitely sort of on the money, so to speak, if you do the history and the study work as well.
Yes, we went to the Roundhouse in December as well, and the responses we got there about like hanging, and then there's a well in the middle of the Roundhouse. I'm not sure if you've ever been there, but there's a well that was worked on that has been blocked off for a few years now because it went so much deeper. And a lot of the responses we got through the night were about the well, and we didn't know until after we went and chat to the guy that kind of showed us around, and then he locked us in there. He was talking about how there was men that died down the well building it.
Shit.
We, yeah, we were pretty shaken after that. That we just got responses all night. Other nights, the end of the night, we were there for about 3 hours. Everything was middle well, down the well, that sort of stuff, and it was was scary.
So, what is the roundhouse?
So the Roundhouse was kind of a smaller version of the Freo prison. It was there before the Freo prison was finished.
Yeah.
So that used to house the worst of the worst. But in some cases, there's a story about a lady there that fell pregnant. She was I believe, a prisoner that ended up working as a cook and fell pregnant to one of the police officers' children. So she got taken out to the dunes to have her baby. She got left out there to have her baby, and then she came back and kept working as a cook. They didn't want that to happen there. But then it ended up serving as like a police lockup. It ended up serving as like the police station when the Freo prison was built, and then just closed. So I think there was 8 cells in there. So it used to house just like the bad people.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. No, I didn't know that. Like, I'd heard about it before, but I didn't know the history about it. So, thanks for
Yeah.
that, man.
No, it's
So,
an interesting spot.
yeah. So, is there any other places that you have been or sort of want to go that maybe people wouldn't realize are pretty haunted or woo woo? I would say.
Yeah. York and 2J are on the list to go soon.
Hmm.
We're trying to work out a weekend to go stay out in York. So obviously it's another colony type town with a lot of settlers and that sort of thing. And then Albany. Albany's a big one. They've got the
Yeah,
jail
man.
down there and a lot of spots kind of around the initial area. But there's so many spots around Perth. New Norcia, if you've ever heard of that, that's a beautiful spot, but also very scary.
My partner's granddad, so my kid's great grandfather, he actually boarded at New Norcia.
Wow.
Yeah, a long time ago, but he doesn't have anything other than fond, happy memories out there. If you ask him about it, he will tell you beautiful place,
Mm.
beautiful people, like all this positive stuff. But if you look into the history, what happened basically like a year or two after he left and moved on from there, yeah, there's some fucking horrible stuff that happened out there. Right?
Yeah, but like we're saying with Frio and Rottnest, it's such a beautiful, interesting spot that a lot of people just go there to have a look and not know what actually happened. But I guess that there's a lot of spots around Perth where people just, yeah, kind of ignorance is bliss to some people, which is fair.
Yeah, man. I mean, another thing that I've sort of experienced in relation to this sort of stuff was when I got in a bit of trouble back when I was 18 and actually ended up doing some time in jail.
Yeah, wow.
I got sent to Casuarina prison. So
Yeah.
Casuarina prison was actually built to when they shut down Freo.
Mm.
So a lot of the prisoners that were in Fremantle that were living in there, I do believe it was from the way that they were living. So they didn't have flushing toilets at Freo. There was no running water and then I think it was the late 80s, if I can remember rightly, the human rights said, no, this prison's
Mhm.
not any good for people to be at anymore. So they shipped all of the people in Fremantle to Casuarina. And the energy is there, bro.
Mhm.
People's names are still scratched into the walls that come from there, and like, yeah, it is a bit creepy, man. You can't deny it.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure of too many spots in Perth that are like the US places, but in America, there's so many old hospitals and old prisons where they used to do a lot of experimental work on. So a
Yeah.
lot of electrotherapy and that sort of thing. But that I don't think in Perth they had too much of that. But the human rights stuff is the fact that they had to step in maybe 100 years after the prisons were opened and then go, actually, wait a minute, we probably shouldn't be treating people like that is pretty bad.
I've heard a lot of bad things about Tasmania.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Apparently, Tasmania is one of the most horrific places in Australia for testing on mental health patients and prisoners back in the 1920s and the 90s. I
Mhm.
do believe that they had their own sort of docking bay, which was a secret bay. There's a channel on TikTok, and it's called, I can't remember what it's called. I should have written it down, but there is a channel on TikTok. I'll send you the link of it. It's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
send me it through.
It's got all these historical facts about these massacre sites, what they used to do to some of the women out there that were in the mental hospitals. And if you do your research all around Australia, there is a lot of hidden sort of history that they don't tell you about.
Oh, yeah, it's stuff that they won't teach you in schools, which is you don't wanna scare the kids too much, but, I mean, the Australian history is there. People just don't wanna sit and hear the too bad stuff, which, in the world that we have today, it's not a bad thing to ignore it.
Yeah, man, 100%. So
Mm.
this is obviously the recovery tapes, and
Yep.
whatever guest I have on, I always put some form of spin on the recovery side of it. So just to close out the interview, man, I'd like to ask you a few questions in relation to what you do to sort of recover and keep your mental health in check after these investigations. So,
Yeah, of course.
what do you do to decompress and return to your normal life, man?
So immediately past the investigation, while we're still all together, we'll do a close where we do a secondary prayer and then we sage. And sage to some people gets rid of that spiritual energy that might attach and linger. There's a
Yep.
few other things that you can burn that kind of like are the same sort of thing. We following that, I always go home and try and get as much sleep as I can. And sometimes that's hard because it's like being at a concert. It's your brain is wired. It's like you've just seen a million lights and there's loud music and you're just hardwired to keep going all night. Like it's so hard to fall asleep, but we always try and get a good amount of sleep. And then I wake up in the morning, essentially just get into a pre-work routine. So I'll wake up, I'll take the dog for a walk, I'll make sure to eat breakfast, I'll sit outside, get some fresh air and just water, a lot of water. I try and clear that next morning at least, because we do call it like a paranormal hangover. It's essentially just like, when you're young and you go out drinking and that sort of stuff, it's you wake up the next morning feeling terrible, drained, everything like that. And you just have to focus on just that recovery stage and having a lot of water, having a lot of food and spending time with friends and even just talking about what you experienced the night before, putting it out there so it's not in your head. Because if it's in your head, you get scared and then you don't want to go back. Like after Swannies, it took me a while. I hadn't gone out. Last weekend was the first time in probably 4 weeks that I actually went out and did some paranormal stuff because of that night. But yeah, the next day after that night, I was feeling awful all day.
Yeah, man. So do you reckon that some investigations, if you didn't close off, do you reckon there's a possibility of them carrying energy back with you from these places?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I think just even walking through these spots and like I wouldn't be surprised if something's lingering around the house sometimes from these places, but we always try and close and make sure nothing comes home with us. But
Yeah,
you
yeah.
you can never be 100% sure that that's gone. We open ourselves up to a lot of communication and we are basically the conduits for the communications. It's never 100% that something's gone. That's why I personally would never use a Ouija board because you're basically
Mhm.
channeling all the energy through you, which I try and avoid as much as I can.
Yeah, 100%, bro. Fuck that. Sage, do you know what the actual reason or purpose they burn sage is?
Uh, Not 100%. I just listen to the mediums and the experts that I go with, and and just follow their advice. It's one of those things. I believe it's just one of those things that gets rid of that spiritual connection. And so we put our arms up and like kind of like open up a bit, and they draw the sage like across underneath you, and it's meant to be if it sticks to you and doesn't kind of blow up like past you, there's something there. But there's a lot of significant history with sage and back with like witches and that sort of thing. So not 100% on why. I just listen to the boss.
Yeah, man, don't ask questions, eh? Just fucking follow the orders.
If someone said this is going to protect you, I'm doing that every time.
Yeah, man. So 100%, dudes. What do people most misunderstand about these investigations?
I think my theory out there with a lot of spiritual guides and people is they just believe it's just a spirit or a ghost lingering around. But I have like a long theory about residual energy. So a lot of the places we go to are very highly frequented spots. So like the Roundhouse, there would have been, hundreds of people in there a week and passing through with a lot of energy, and even like the Swan Districts Hospital. Think about the people that go through hospitals on a daily basis. So a lot of the time we go to a spot and we might get some communication, we might get some EMF energy come through, but a lot of the time I think that's just what someone's routine used to be. So if they don't want to cross over into the other side, which is a whole nother thing we could get into another time.
Yeah, man.
But I just think people that don't cross over stay in kind of a similar routine to what we do now. So think of a nurse or a cleaner, they would just be following their regular routes around a location. And you might get a spike on the EMF, a little bit of communication, but then that disappears. And that's because they could be going down to 50 different rooms. So that's one thing I think some people, when they go ghost hunting, when they go investigating, they think everything is a spirit and everything's either good or bad. But I just think there's energies that cross over in so many different spots that you can't be 100% sure. And that's why we try and ask a lot of prompting questions. We try and get a better understanding on who we're talking to and why they're talking to us. And it's not easy. It's not easy to narrow it down. We never want to make assumptions.
And 100%. That was a good answer, actually. It sort of gives it that normality where, not every noise that you hear or every like feeling that you get is actually something there fucking
Yeah.
trying to haunt you. Like, I think that's probably something that people would get twisted or caught up when they're leaving these negative comments. They're just like, oh, rah, rah, all this other shit. But that was a
Yeah.
good way. That was a good way to answer that, actually, man.
Yeah, there's so many big YouTubers out there and big channels that every place they go to that they have to see a demon or a demon has to come out and talk to them. And I don't believe that's the case. And that's why when we reach out to the locations that we do, I always give examples through my videos of where we debunk, where we try and narrow it down to what we need to know in the locations. And I always focus on history. So whenever I contact a new place and say, hey, are you happy to have us out there? If they want to have a chat on the phone, I'm always like, look, we debunk, we talk about history. If no paranormal happenings happen, that's a good thing. Because the time
Yeah.
that they do happen, then it's more truthful than everything happening in every video.
Yeah, wow. So
Yeah.
give your YouTube channel a shout out, bro. How do people
Yeah.
find you?
So I'm at Paranormal Talks on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram, and I think eventually I want to jump on Twitch as well and do some live streams at some of these spots to get people more active and engaged in what we do while we're there, because we're normally at these locations for 3 or 4 hours at a time, and I
Yeah.
only do maybe 40. Maybe sometimes I do part 1, part 2, 40-minute videos. So if people see more of what we do, it might be cool. But yeah, at Paranormal Talks.
Yeah, you'll find it on the links on Instagram, and I will mention you on TikTok as well. So
Yeah.
if anybody does want to follow your channel or get around it, you'll be able to find it on my page. So
Yeah.
where do you see yourself in 5 years with all this, dude? Do you have any plans for anything big
Ooh.
or?
Yeah, I would love to just kind of cover Australia first before I expand out to other countries. I
Yeah.
feel like going over east and doing a bunch of things there just to cover the basis of home. But I would love to go over to the US and do like the old conjuring houses and the Velisca Axe House and that sort of thing. There's so many amazing spots, and the US does it in a good way where you can actually book tours and overnight stuff at a lot of these spots where Australia doesn't really do that too much.
Yeah,
But
okay.
that's the dream.
Yeah, nice work, man. So, do
Yeah.
you have like what do we have to look forward to as for people that are following your channel or about to follow your channel? Do you have anything coming up this year that's pretty big?
Yeah, so March is going to be part one, part two of the Roundhouse. That was probably one of our biggest investigations we did last year. And
Yep.
then over the next few months, we've got York, potentially Albany, and hopefully 2J what we're hitting. So all those videos will be out this year. And York's going to be a big one. We're possibly going to stay at one of the most haunted hotels in York for 2 nights in a row. So that's going to be a big weekend for sure. But yeah, lots to look forward to.
Is that where that Pioneer Cemetery is? Do I have that right?
No, so there's the Pioneer Cemetery out in York, but the Settlers Inn Hotel is just down the road a little bit. So
Yeah,
there's
wow.
there's a lot of good spots out in York that we're gonna hopefully cover in that weekend.
Yeah, hectic, man. All right. Well, I
Yeah,
think we'll shut the interview off there and we'll sort of leave people with a bit of a teaser, a bit of a taste. But
yeah,
this has been a really good interview and thank you so much for coming on. I think I've learned something. I think people who lived in Perth that might not have known what we were talking about might have learned something. And then
yeah.
yeah, I'm sure there'll be a few people out there that'll be fucking going, fuck that, I don't want to know about anymore, you know?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. If anyone does have any extra questions, I'm always active on socials. I always like having those conversations. And if there's any footage or anything I can send through to try and prove it a bit more, then yeah, just reach out. But yeah, thank you for having me.
No, that's all right, dude. What I'll do is I'll stay in contact with you
Yep,
and obviously do the social media videos and stuff to advertise this episode. But I'll also stay in contact with you as well. And I think after you've gone to a few more places, I
yep,
reckon we'll get you back on for a second episode. I might even meet you in person if I can get the
yeah,
finances together because you're pretty close to me and we'll go to the studios and we'll sort of get a bit more of a demonstration off you with some of
yep.
these devices and that you use.
And if you ever want to come to a spot, maybe not a super scary spot, but you're welcome to come and join us as well.
Nah, bro, I'll stay at home in my bed, man.
Fair enough. Better to be safe.
Yeah. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this interview because I really have. And I'm pretty sure that you had a good time as well, having a chat with me as well, mate. So thanks a lot for
Yeah.
your time. And we'll cut it off there. So keep your eyes peeled on the socials, everybody, for the videos. And we'll be back next week for episode number 30. Thank you very much.
Thank you.